Hi everyone, welcome to another series, another video, another series in our home coding YouTube channel. So it's been a few months since the last one, but this one is a follow-up from the one we did a few months ago, late in 2019. If you remember, we started off with the Asteroids series, and basically it was my take on Asteroids. So there was a few, wasn't authentic to the original, but there was a sort of a purpose to that in order to provide the foundation for what we're doing now, which is a network-based multiplayer version of the game. So I'll tell you what, let's bring it up. Let's see if we can actually get the game back up and running again. So I've got a terminal here. If I cd into the original folder, and I think it's npm run serve. Oh, so minrocks npm run serve. That should give us a web address locally that we can have a look at. For those of you who haven't seen this, this is just going to give you an idea of where we're going with our multiplayer game. So, yeah, great. Immediately died. Let me reload that again. There we go. So this is us here in the middle, and you can see that the ship actually looks at the direction of where the mouse is. Okay, I can move the ship by using the arrow keys. I'm going to change that to the AWSD keys like on other games, because it's because I'm using the mouse as well, everything's over to this side. But as you can see, it works all fine. The circles, the reason why the circles are on there, you can see the blue ones around the asteroids and the red one here, it's to do with collision detection. It was so much easier just to try and detect collisions between two circles than it is to try and do it with random shapes that we've created here. So rather than try and work out the logistics of trying to hit exactly on the edge of a triangle or exactly on the edge of like this point here on the asteroid, I've just done it to circles. And although the triangle and the asteroids are graphical in the presentation, the actual collision works if the edge of the ship, the red, anywhere on the red touches anywhere of the blue circle on the asteroid. I'll show that in a second, but you just saw me fire a shot there, so you can see the shots are fired in the direction that I'm shooting, and the asteroids follow the pattern in the game in that when I hit them once, they split into smaller ones and go a bit faster, and then if I hit them again, where's this guy here? So let's shoot him. Oh, there. Shoot him again, and they go into even smaller ones with potentially more speed. This one hasn't, but as you can see, this one's gone quite fast. And then when we hit them after the third one, they disappear. And the idea is that you can just keep hitting. So a few things to note then. You'll see that the bullets go off the edge of the screen and come on the other side. So if I shoot up from the top, they come up at the bottom. And obviously to the sides as well. Ooh, whoa. Okay. Also, I think, do I go off? Yeah, I go off the bottom and the top as well. And yeah, so the collision, I'm going to hit this side of my ship to the blue. You'll see this happen there. So you can see the ship hasn't touched the asteroid, but the circle has touched the asteroid circle. And that classes in this game as a collision. It just makes the processing so much easier. And so long as you can see the circle, to be honest, it's, you know, it's no big. It's not like you're working with edges that you can't see. So that works fine. Now, as you can see, the game just stops. I haven't put any kind of continuation system in place. There's no scores. There's no proper menu system or anything like that. It was just purely an idea to create the game concept and put it onto a browser. But now that we've got this, we can lift elements of this and put it now into a good sort of realistic multiplayer system that we can actually put onto the internet and download it from various computers wherever you are, in the same room, the same house, or anywhere in the world, as long as you're connected to the internet, and play the game against each other and all in the same game in real time. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a setup where we can build the server. That's the logic that actually manages all the data, like the asteroids and the collisions and where the shots are and where the ships are. And then the client, which is what we see here and what's presented to the user with the interface and the visuals. And we're going to create the whole lot, and we're going to demonstrate it at the end of this course and introduce so many different techniques, so many different facets of game development, that it should go a long way towards the next MMO game that we decide to do, of which I've already got a few in mind, but we'll stick with this for the minute. Very good. So where do we start? Okay, well, just a few things to point out. I'm not going to explain every single thing that I do as we go along, because it would just take forever. But if you want some homework and you want to do some research on what I'm doing, there's a couple of references here. The first one is we're going to be doing a lot with this P5 library. This P5 library is the graphics library that we're going to be working with. And if you just click on any of these references, I'm just trying to find one that you can interact with. So let's say mouse X, for example. So you can see the example is that as I move the line across this square, the line is drawn at that point, and it's in what? Within a function, it's 2 lines of code, and even one of them lines is just to set the background color. The actual line is simply drawn with this line here. That's how easy it is to start doing things, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I would recommend you keep this to hand. We're going to be using it occasionally, go to various things in here. The other reference I would strongly encourage you to do, if you're serious about this, is to look at this guy, Dan Schiffman, in the Code and Train. He 80 to 90% of what I've learned on P5 with the graphics is down to what I've learned off these videos. It's quite a lot to watch, but he's got a great teaching method. I mean, 1 million subscribers says a lot about him. He doesn't do anything. He tends to sort of just explain out the functions and create things with no final end. He sort of leaves things open for the user to carry on. So he's not someone who creates something with an end point of view, and he's very rarely dealt with this multi sort of computer system tied in over the internet. So that's where we're sort of carrying on from, but very much standing on the shoulders of giants here. There's a lot of good videos I'd recommend you look at. Anything to do with P5 or anything to do with JavaScript for that matter, it's going to be a good foundation going forward. Use them, watch them when you can, and then when a lot of the stuff you'll see me do here makes a lot more sense. But I'm going to go on the basis that anything that can be explained by him I'm not going to spend much time on, because we just want to progress into the meaty stuff of the multiplayer system. So let's get started now. As I've said in previous videos, there are certain requirements to do this kind of development on a computer. You just can't do it out the box, unfortunately, but it's relatively easy. The only real thing you need to get downloaded onto your computer as a necessity is something called node.js. So node.js.org, and you should, depending on what computer you're on, Windows or Mac or Linux, it'll give you the versions. So this is defaulted to Mac for me. Download the LTS version, just means long-term support, and it means it just means you don't have to worry about keeping it up to date, and it's fairly safe, as in it's not going to require regular updates. So download the LTS. When you download it and run it, it's sort of like an install wizard, so you may need administrator permissions if you're on Windows, I'm not sure. But just run it as a wizard and next, and put your password and whatever. And then when it's all done, if you're on Windows, you should be able to bring up a command prompt. So like on Mac here, I brought up terminal. On Windows, you should be able to bring up a command prompt, and you should be able to type just in the command prompt node space -v, and it should give you a version number like this. If it doesn't, restart your machine and try again. If it still doesn't, then try the installer again. If you get stuck, put something in the comments and we'll see if we can work that one out. But that generally works. The installer's pretty good with Node, so you should be okay. Now, when you've installed Node, you also installed Node Package Manager, so you should be able to do npm-v and you'll get a version number. So if you've seen these two things, great, we're set to go. But the other thing you could do with, and I'd highly recommend, it's not absolutely essential, but you really need it, and that's to get a good text editor. On Windows, you may be familiar with something like Notepad++, or something simple like that. I'd recommend maybe something a bit more designed for programming. So, for example, on Windows and Mac and Linux, you can download this one, which is Visual Studio Code. This is what we did Rocks, the first version, in. This is what I do most of my development in day to day. But there's other ones out there. For example, I've got one here called Atom. Let me just see what's in here. Yeah, this is some stuff I've been working on in the past. So this is Atom. This is another editor. It's pretty cool. So some stuff in there as well. But I would say if you can get this, it's a freebie. It's easy to download from Microsoft, and yeah, it does the job. It's got everything you need. I don't even use all the features of it, so yeah, hopefully you can get that installed. So now I'm going to assume you've got all that installed, and this here, this is the original folder. If you want to open a folder, so I'll open this again now as if I'm starting from scratch. So if I close this, don't save that, right? So code's loaded, but there's no windows open for it here, okay? So if I just go to new window, okay, and then if I just go to file, add folder to workspace, navigate to the folder where your code is, or where we're going to be working. Now we want to add this rocks one because there's a few things from here we want to copy, so I definitely want to add this folder. So I'll double click into rocks and then just click add, and basically we're back to where we are a minute ago. We've got the rocks folder, but now I want to create a new folder for the MMO version. So what I'm going to do now is go file, add. Now make sure you don't go to open or open workspace. Make sure you go to add folder to workspace, otherwise it removes this one. Now I want to create a new folder here and add that because we're creating a new project. So I'm going to click new folder, and I'm going to call it Rocks MMO. So make sure you're outside the Rocks folder now. Make sure you've come out of that. So I've got all my stuff I'm doing for YouTube in here in this YouTube folder. So make sure you're outside of the Rocks folder so you can see the Rocks folder there when you click create. Just to show you that, see, it Rocks and Rocks MMO is now in the same folder. That's how you want it. Okay. So go to Rocks MMO and click add, and we now have that as a separate folder in our project, and that's great because it means it's going to be easy to copy stuff from our version 1 folder when we need it, but we can still have our separate folder here. Great. Right, so the first thing I want to do is, I think we did this in the last one with the version 1, is let's come out of this and go into Rocks MMO, and then we just need to initialize it with the npm that we downloaded, and just type in that npm init -y, and that just gives us a default package file, package.json. We can change this later, so it's not important for us at the minute. The only thing I will say is my preference is to change the name of the file that we use here to the name of the project rather than just leaving it as indexed. That's my preference, what I've done. You don't have to, but if you just want to follow along, you don't mind doing that, that's fine. So that means we have to create that file now inside the same folder. So make sure you clicked on the Rocks MMO folder, click on the new file icon, and type in rocks mmo.js. Rocks mmo.js. Yeah, here we go. Cool. So we now have our server file. Now, just need to make a distinction here between server and client. When we did version 1, if you remember, we were only dealing with the client. Everything was encased in our own little browser bubble, and we didn't care about what was happening anywhere else. It was just us in our browser playing that game. But if we want to start getting multiple players to interact with the one game, especially as it's at the same time, but even if it wasn't, but more so as it's at the same time, we need to have effectively a server, a central server, a point where all the different clients can connect to at any point in time and update their situation, and also get updates back from everybody else's situation as well. So we need to create, in essence, a server section, and then we need to create the client section. Now the client section is similar to the version 1 game where we had this. This is sort of the user interface with the keys and the visual display on the screen. So that's like the client section, but that's not enough. We need to do a server section as well, and they're both going to work in tandem to help us produce this multiplayer game. So this root folder here, this Rocks MMO root folder, is going to be our server folder, okay? But inside here we can create the client. So easy enough to do. Let's just make sure Rocks MMO is selected. Click on the new folder icon and we'll just call this client. Easy as that. Now, in version 1 we built this on top of a framework called Vue. It's a JavaScript framework that's really cool. I use it for a lot of stuff. But I've been thinking about this over the last few months, but particularly this last week as I've been prepping for this. And I've decided we're not going to use it. It's not really adding that much value to what we're doing with the graphics. It just adds, it takes a while to set up. It's adding more things for the browser to have to process, which means we're going to lose performance a little bit potentially, and it's harder to sort of look for errors when we've got it up and running. And it does give a lot, but for the purpose of graphics and a graphic based game, I don't think we need it. Now we are going to lose a few nice little features if we don't use it, so we'll have to cross them bridges when we come to them, but for now we're just going to go straight into loading P5 directly in as the graphics library. So how do we do that? Right, well, if you've got Visual Studio Code, we can do a little cheat here just to save us a bit of typing. So let's go back to our client. So let's just create a new file in here inside the client, index.html. Okay, so this is going to be the file that gets sent to the client, and it's basically what's rendered in here. Now, the cheat is, if I just type in HTML:5, now you'll notice that this has come up, this is what's called a snippet, and this here, basically HTML5 is the current standard for HTML. So Visual Studio Code has set us up a snippet by default, so that if we just type this in and press enter, all of this gets typed in at once. There. And it just means we don't have to type all that out, because it's like a common setup for this kind of thing. Now, feel free to pause the video if you want to just sort of copy that in. If you don't have that feature, it's not, the stuff here is not critical, it's just the actual structure, the HTML, the head, the body, the close and tag, just make sure you've got that structure right. So hopefully you're up to this point now. Incidentally, this title here is what appears in this tab in Chrome. So if I change the title to say Rocks MMO, Rocks MMO will appear in there in that tab in here. So just to show you that when we get round to it, I'll stick that in now. Okay, cool. So we've got our index file. Let's see, what else do we need? Okay, so we need to download the P5 library now, this graphics library that renders this. So let's have a look at P5. Let's go back to the home page. Okay, so get started. Download and file setup. Okay, so that's what we want. Let's go to p5.js complete, and let's go with this minified version. This is if you were doing development with P5 and you wanted to do more developer that itself. Well, we don't want to do that. We just want to use the existing library. So we'll take the minified version. This just keeps it lightweight, and we just don't have to worry about it as much. So if we click that, that downloads into our downloads folder. Now let me go to my downloads. Okay, let me just open a new Finder window. Let's bring that on here. So if I go to where are we? Data? No, it's not data one. It's desktop, YouTube, Rocks MMO, client. Okay, so that's important that we get into that folder. The Rocks MMO client. Once you're in here, go to your downloads folder, and you should have p5.min.js in there. If the download was here in your thing in your browser, so bring that and drop that in the same place as your index.html. Okay. So when you've done that, go back into your index.html file. We need to now load a reference to this. And we do that by means of a script tag. So again, Visual Studio Code has these little snippets that we can use. So the one we want is this script : src. Okay, so press enter. If you haven't got it, don't worry, just pause the video when we've finished typing it out. So I want // and now notice how Visual Studio Code, this is why an IDE like Visual Studio Code is so helpful. Things like Notepad and that won't give you this kind of functionality. So // basically in computer terms means the current folder I'm in right now. So this file, index.html, is in the client folder. So if I do // it's saying look in the current folder, the client folder, because we're about to import something from there. And immediately it's telling me that obviously index.html is there because that's the file we're in, but also our p5.min.js library is there. So I know I can confidently click that and know that it's going to be there for us. In fact, if I go over to here and click refresh, there we go. So it's yeah, you don't want to look at that, give you a headache. But that's enough for us to know that the p5 library is now loaded into our index file. Great. The thing is, that's not going to do anything for us because we're not doing anything with it, it's just sitting there. So we need to start thinking about doing something with it. So we also now need to create our own JS file so that we can do our own manipulation of what we have and use the p5 library. So click on the client folder, make sure that's selected, click on new file, and we'll call this sketch.js. I only call it sketch because the guy Code and Train calls it down. Works for him, works for me. So okay, sketch.js. Now p5, oh, we need to add a reference to that here in this as a script as well. So again, script source // and now you'll notice there's a sketch.js there, so we can add him. Brilliant. Great. So now we now have access to the p5 library in this sketch.js file, which is super. There's two main functions that we tend to use in p5. One of them is called function setup. Okay, and one of them's called function draw. Oop. Okay. Oh, that didn't go well. Okay. So we've got function setup and function draw. So what can we do at this point? Let's see. I'll tell you what, we really need to create the web server now so that we can at least see the index.html file and the JS being loaded in. It's not like Office or something where you just go to file and open. We need to create a web server that serves the HTML along with the JavaScript we've just put in it, such as the p5. So for that we have to go back to the server section of the code. So let's just close this all down for a moment. Okay, so you remember the server section of the code is this bit here at the root, basically rocks-mmo.js. So let me just, so we need to start loading things into our server, and there's a minimum amount of things we need to put in to make it work. It is just a few bits and bobs, but we'll be up and running in a few minutes, as you'll see. But just also bear in mind that the JS files on the server and the JS files on the client, the only thing they have in common is that they are both JavaScript, JS, but their paths in reality never cross. They are working in two completely separate environments. The one on the server is working on the server and stays there and does stuff, logic, data manipulation, the serving of HTML files. The one in the client only ever works once you load your client up, and it loads up then libraries like the p5 library and so on in the client. Other than that, their paths never cross, and sometimes when you're dealing with JS at both ends of the system, it can get a bit confusing sometimes. So we just need to bear that in mind. Okay, so this is a separate section of JS that we're dealing with here. So to get this bit of the JS working, we need to just I'm just going to copy these from a demo site. Feel free to pause the video at this point if you just want to copy these. But this is basically declaring three constants called express, app, and server, and you'll notice that they use this require method, and that basically says go into the libraries that we've installed and load these into my memory here ready to work with. Okay, so if we save that, let's see what happens. So we're in the root rocks MMO here. So to run the file, do you remember in package we did rocks MMO? Yeah. So to run the file, we'll come back to that in a minute, but we need to do node and then rocks mmo.js. Right, so we have our first error, and it will be the first of many errors. That's a good thing. If you don't make errors, chances are you're not learning at a good enough rate because you're just copying other people's code. It's good to see errors because in real life you're going to get errors and you need to know how to deal with them. So this is good. So let's see what this tells us. Cannot find module express. Okay. So here we've tried to require an express module, but in reality we haven't installed it yet. We've just tried to reference it, but it doesn't exist. So remember at the beginning we did an npm and we npm init and we created this file. Well, this npm can load up these libraries, these modules for us, and the beauty of these libraries are people have already written them, they've published them on the internet, they've made them freely available, so you don't have to rewrite everything every single time. Chances are for a lot of the stuff you do, there's already libraries out there, you just got to know what it is. So all we have to do to get this working is type in npm install, or just the letter I. You can do either, and obviously I is more convenient, and express. So this will now, let's have a look here. So look what's happened here. Two things have happened. Number one, a node modules folder has been created, and number two, a package.lock JSON. Well, don't worry about that for now, that's fine, that's just part of the system. But this node modules folder, you'll notice down here there is something called express, and there's an express folder, and that's the only thing we've installed. So what are all these things here? Well, basically express is doing, or the people who made express is doing, or did exactly what we're doing now. They've borrowed from a lot of other people's code, brought it in, and then just produced their product based on that, and then they put that out as a thing called express. We're now getting express, and we're going to be using that as part of our package. I mean, we're not necessarily going to make it freely available, but it uses the same principle of borrowing other people's code. So all these other things are now being installed so that express can work. So let's see if it does. Let's go back to node. Okay, so no errors, but not really done anything. So what's going on? Let's go back to our file. Well, we've loaded these into memory and that's fine, but then we don't do anything. It just ends the file. That's it. It's just finished. So we needed to do something. So what we needed to do is just going to copy this again, just a few lines. You can pause the video again if you want to type this. So here we created a constant called server. This is our web server that we're creating, so we can save the HTML file. And we're basically saying listen on a port number, and if you get a request, output this in the console log, which we'll have a look at in a moment. The problem is here we don't have a port, we haven't set it anywhere up here. So what is port? So if I save this and I try to run it, yeah, see, port is not defined. It doesn't know what port is. It's meant to contain something. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say const port equals 3000. There we go. So this means that now, if I run it, we are listening on, and you'll notice it says listening on : plus port, which actually translates to listening on : 3000, which is what we set the port as. So for example, if let me just turn that off. 3001, for example. Save that. Run it again. Listening on port 3001. So, what does that mean? It means we can now go to localhost : 3001. Now, localhost simply means any web server running on our local computer, which is what this is at the minute. We've just created a local web server so that we don't have to go to the internet to test it. You know, we're just trying it locally. It is separate from the client, but it still sits on our computer here. That's fine. That's common development. But to access it as a web request, we need to access it through port 3001, which means you have to do localhost : 3001. Press enter. Now, cannot get slash. That looks like a bad thing, but for where we are, that's actually a good thing, because that tells us that the web server is actually working. If I was to take out that 3001, it would actually say not found. It doesn't even know what we're on about. But 3001 suggests it's found it, but it can't give us back what the slash is. Slash just basically means whatever it is, slash, you know. That's all what slash means, the root of the web. If I go to /en, cannot get /en. So that's all what that is. But it means the web server itself is working, so that's good. So let's go back to our code. So how do we get it to do something when we do slash? Okay, so we've just got to add something more in here. Oh, incidentally, these green lines with the 2 slashes at the beginning are comments. So anything after the 2 slashes just gets ignored by the processor. That's for our personal benefit as a developer in English or whatever language. It doesn't get processed. It's not relevant to the code. So we get the HTML file. That's what we want to do. Generated and copied from Vue. Now we're not using Vue as we said, so we'll just put get HTML file. So we want to get access to a folder called public, so that we can access files in that folder public. That's what this express.static is. But we didn't call it public. We called it client. I think in another project that I copied this from, I must have called it public. But we're calling this client. It's good. So now we had cannot get. Now let me just go back to that. Cannot get slash. Now here we can define what slash does. So in this function here, it says if somebody tries to get slash, render the index file which is inside the client folder. Index, this one here. We don't have to put the .html. So we're saying save back the index.html file from the client folder. That's what this bit of code tells us if they go to slash as the web request, which is basically no folders at the end of the domain. Let's try it. Okay, so that hasn't worked. Now, this is why. Anytime you make a change on the server side of the code, you have to quit Node and restart it. Now, at first that's okay, but after a while it becomes a bit of a pain. So what you can do, I'm not going to do this, but you can do npm install node.mom. Okay, and the reason why I'm not going to do this is I've already got this installed where it's accessible from everywhere. But if you do npm I node.mom, press enter, let it install, then what you can do is you can simply type node.mom and then the name of the file like we did before. But even better than that, do you remember, because in package.json we set the file? That means now we don't even have to put that. By simply saying node.mom, it will automatically check package.json for the main, and it will use that file instead. So we can simply just put node.mom. So that's why we put that in there. Press enter. Okay, so path is not defined. So we are getting errors, but they're quite clear at the minute what's going on. Path is not defined. So you notice we have this path constant here, but we haven't set it like we didn't with port earlier. We haven't set it. So let's just, again, I'm just going to copy this. There, so we're just going to require this library path. Now I don't think we have to install this, it's already built into Node, we just need to import it like this. Now, did you notice that restarted then when I clicked save. I haven't touched this, and it's gone from having an error to restarting, starting, and it's listening with no error. So that's what node 1 did. In fact, let's just show this again. Let's just bring this up here. Okay, so if I change something, let's just say I put a comment in here. Start. Now if I save this, watch what happens here. Oh, don't want to save the terminal, I want to save this. Restarted automatically. That's what node 1 is doing for us. So it's just one less thing to worry about. Cool. Let me just bring that back. Okay, so let's go to our website. Now the cannot get is gone, which means it now can do something. But it looks like it's doing nothing. Now another useful tool, most browsers have this, but Chrome I find is one of the better ones, is to look, we can look behind the scenes of what's going on. If you go to these three little dots here, if you're on Mac, I think similar to Windows, go to more tools and developer tools. Now you see on a Mac you can also press Command, Option and the letter I, which I normally do. I'll just show you that there. And this will bring up this panel here, which is what's going on in the background whenever things are happening here and in what we can see. Now don't worry about this favicon thing, we don't really bother about that. It's just something to do with what appears here in the URLs. We're not fussed about that. So we need to see what's going on. Now if you click on Elements, Elements shows us what's going on here. As I hover over things, different things get highlighted on the page. Now isn't this interesting? It looks like there's nothing there, but there's definitely something there in a square, 100 by 100. What's going on here? Well, you remember we loaded the P5 library and we put the two functions in, but we didn't do anything with them. In Sketch, was it? So they're just empty. Well, if we don't do anything with them, P5 by default throws in some stuff for us. And one of the things it does is throws in the parameters of the width and the height, which defaults to 100 and 100, and then carries on as normal as if we'd done stuff. And that leaves us with this canvas here. Where are we? It's there, a canvas. But ordinarily we wouldn't see that. So let's just make it so it's more obvious. So in our setup function here, I'm just going to type in background, let's see, 128 for example, save that, reload, and now we have our canvas, a lot more visible to us. What's gone on here then? Let's go into reference in P5, and if we search for background, oh there it is, we'll search for background, but it's there. So this is the background function, and basically what this says is we can assign a colour just to the background. Now we can either assign a grayscale from 0 to 255, 0 being black, 255 is white, and anywhere in between is like a grey. So I did 127, which is about halfway, that's like a grey. If we put, if we put three colours in, we do like red, green and blue values, which is what any colour in the digital spectrum can be made up from. So anywhere between 0 and 255 in any one of these three columns gives us a colour. Red and green in this instance will give you a yellow, as long as you keep the blue down to 0, and so on and so on. Different things we can do, we can just put flat colours in. So what we've done is we've just simply said put a grey in. So we did background 128, and that gave us a square. But on this game we were full width. In fact, if I if we look at that, we were full width. No, we could hard code a width into here. Let's just override. We said it automatically adds it by default. Let's start doing our own thing here. So in setup, let's do a P5 function called create canvas, and create canvas wants a width and a height. So for example, we could say 300 wide, 500 tall. Okay, reload that, and we can set it. we could do a background of 128, not 255. I'm not sure what that does, but let's have a look. Okay, that'll do. And again, not bad. Roughly mobile phone size, well, a bit small, but getting there. But we want it really to be more whatever size screen we're working with. That would be much better than just hard coding the size. So again, there's an easy fix for that. P5 has a variable that we can access called window width. Let's load that. Yay, look at that. It's the width of our viewable screen. If we go to, let's do the same with window height, and hopefully we'll get full height. Yay, look at that, cool. However, if we look here, we've just got a bit of a scrolly problem going on, so it's not quite worked as we thought. I also noticed that there's just sort of a gap going on here along the left and the top, so we really need to address that as well. So what we can do is just apply a quick style fix to the body tag to get rid of this gap here. So we go into index.html and let's just add a style tag in here. Remember we did that with the script. I'm going to do style now. So you'll notice that every HTML page, or pretty much every one, has a body tag. Now we can access that and apply styles to it. Dead easy. Inside the style tag, we do body, open brace. Oh, yeah, let's just talk about that for a sec. Okay, so I call that a brace. I just want to make some notes here. The comments are not working here, okay. Okay, so these are HTML comments. That was JavaScript comments with the 2 slashes. This is HTML comments. So I just want to explain about the braces and that. So I put these in this one here. So these are called braces. Okay, but you can also have these, which are parentheses. But you can also have these, which are brackets. Okay, so now in general speaking, you may use any of them when you're talking about things, but in coding you've got to be a bit more specific, because each one of these sets of things does different things, especially in JavaScript. And for example, here in the style, this is called a CSS style. You have to use braces here at this point. So it's just something to bear in mind. I'll leave that there for now anyway, because it's a HTML comment, it won't do anything. So we need to apply a style to this body tag, and the 2 styles we need to apply are the margin, which we'll set to 0, and the padding. Actually, I like this bigger font size now, it's easy to work with. Just make that a bit bigger that way. Okay, so now we've reduced the 0, the padding and margin on the body to 0, and if we reload that, we can see that those white lines have gone. But we still have a problem with our scroll. Now, I have messed around with this in the past, and the quickest solution I came up with was just simply to put a -6 pixels on the window height. So it's whatever, it basically creates the canvas at 6, at the window height -6 pixels, and this seems to work. If we go to the browser, reload, and there we go. Pretty much, there's a bit of a gap at the bottom, but we've pretty much got the whole height, and you know, no scrolly lines. So we'll stick with that for now. Cool. So we've got our canvas to work with now. What can we do now? I think it's time to build a ship. So you'll notice in the rocks, the original game, if we go to source and classes, we had these 3 classes here. I'm not going to go into detail about what classes are, but suffice to say, a class is a nice way to sort of contain all related code for a particular thing in one place. So all the code related to the ship, for example, we can put in one place. So we, just so we know where to look for it. It's easier to manage in code and so on. And there's other reasons as well, which we'll come to. So that's all we need to know for now on that. So inside the client folder of our new one, we'll create a new folder called classes, and then inside that we'll create a new file called ship.js. Cool. So let's create our ship class. Okay, feel free to pause this video at any time if you're not keeping up. So we need to put a constructor in here. So this is what happens when we first create a ship. This is what we're passing into the ship class to set it going, as it were. So what I want to do is, let's see, what have I done in this one? So I've passed in P5. Well, we don't need to do that because I'm not using view. We've got access to P5 anyway, so that's fine. But we are also passing in an X and a Y. So basically, in P5 terms, or in canvas terms I should say, an X and a Y is this, just X is along and Y is down. And it starts in this top left corner here, so that's 0x, 0y, and that goes all the way to, I don't know, 1000x maybe, 0y, and then, you know, 1000x, 800y, whatever it might be. And you can access any point in between there on the canvas. So we've put an X and a Y, so basically in that point, what we were saying was start the ship at a particular point. Okay, so let's, for now, just let's set an X and a Y. Okay, now it would be tempting here just to say, right, set the X and the Y as X and Y within the ship, but we may as well make the most of P5 here, and P5 gives us some really good vector-based libraries and functions and features that really make our coding so much easier to do once you get your head around what's going on. So rather than just say this, setting it to X, what we need, we're going to change it slightly. So first of all, we need to say this. This simply says, in this instance, the class that we're in. So this refers to the ship class that we're in and the object we're about to make from that. So we can say this dot position, which is a new variable, equals create vector x, y. So let me explain this out. So this dot position is now something that belongs to the ship object that we've created. But it's not just a simple thing like an x or a y, which would just be a number. It's the result of this P5 create vector function. Well, we need to initiate the ship first. So let's create the ship here. Let is a way of setting a variable up that could change. So we'll just use let for now. And in this, for now, we're going to change this for the game, but we'll just call it me. So let me equals new ship. Now, remember we set x and y in the constructor for when we create a new ship. So now that I've opened this with brackets, it's saying it wants an x and it wants a y. So, I don't know, let's just give it some random value, well not random, but like hard-coded values. So we'll just set it to 100, 100. Okay, let's run that code. And, oh, we have an error. So ship is not defined at sketch JS line 4. So ship is not defined. Okay, so what's happened here is we've created this ship class, but as far as this sketch file is concerned, it has no knowledge of it whatsoever. It doesn't know, has no idea. We've got to tell it there's something there. So the way we do that is, remember how we added these JS files in our index.html? So let's just do that again. But this time, remember, we're not in the same folder. We have to go into the classes folder. And then ship.js. So now this is accessible. And we're just going to put that above the sketch file. I think the sketch one has to be last, I'm not sure. So let me save that. Okay, so the error's gone. Okay, so one of the advantages of the console is we can just see what's going on behind the scenes here. So if I type, for example, me, Me is not defined. I know why. Because where's sketch? We've set me inside the setup, but once the setup's run, me disappears. It doesn't exist any further than that. So to make the variable me persist, we need to put it outside of the functions, and then because we've declared it there, we just put me. Yeah, let's run that. So now if I type me, there we have me refers to a ship. Can I press enter? Yeah. With the position, remember we set that up, which was a create vector with the x and the y 100. Now remember we have create vectors of z's, we're not dealing with that in this instance, but we have a ship. So what can we do with that? Can we present that on the screen graphically? Well, yes we can. So so we did, for example, something like this, me.show, if I could type, me.show. So now we run this, oh, show is not a function. Well, of course it is, we haven't set it up. So what we can do, we can add it as a prototype, ship.prototype.show equals function. So now anything we put in here will happen when that ship.show or me.show runs. So all we want to do really is just show it at them coordinates for now, don't we? But if we do it as, say, a circle, just to make it nice. So in P5, the method for a circle is to use ellipse. So obviously you can make a circle from an ellipse if it's just got the same width and height. So let's see, it wants an x. Well, we have an x inside the position variable here. So this dot position dot x, comma, it wants a y. This dot position dot y, comma, and it wants a radius x and a radius y. So as long as we keep them the same, we're going to have a circle. So let's just put 30, 30. It can also take things like how much we rotate it. So if it was an ellipse, we can rotate it sort of like that and so on. But we're not bothered about that. So we're happy with this. See if this works. Hey, there we go. So there we have our ship. So, but it's not really doing anything for us at the minute, but it is rendering on the screen. So let's see, what can we do now? How about if we give it some movement that we can control? I think that would be the next best step to take. So let's create another method in our ship class. So ship.prototype dot update equals function. Yeah, okay. So let's think, what are we going to do here? We want to capture the users up, down, left, right inside the main code, not here. But we want to update the ship in here once we've got it. So let's just go back to the main code for a moment. So if we create another function called function, what should we call it? Keys pressed. Yeah, that'll do. Function keys pressed. So I have somewhere, I think it's it. I actually did it in the ship class in here. Did I? Oh no, did I do it in the main file? There we go. So we did. Oh, we called it capture key press. Well, we don't need the P5 again because we've got global access to that this time. So I'll copy the rest of it. Let's go back into our sketch and paste it there. There we go. So So let's get rid of the P5 references. We don't need them. Okay, so I think that'll do. So yeah, for a start, this has got this.ship because we were inside the ship class running these functions, I think. Oh no, because we were in Vue.js, we used the this keyword a lot. We haven't got Vue.js, as I keep saying. So this.ship can actually be swapped out for me. We can just simply say me. So if I copy all of them, change that to me. Again, pause the video at any time if I'm running ahead. But these are constants that are set by P5 to pick up on what arrow keys are pressed. But you know what? I don't want the arrow keys. I definitely know. I would rather have the WASD keys. I don't know how we see. Like this is left arrow. That's like a constant, but I can't do it, or I don't know what the WASD ones are. But I can put the equivalent in. So left arrow is A on the keyboard, and A is 65. So I can just say 65. Right arrow is 68, which is D. Up arrow is W, and W is -1, 87, and down arrow, which is S, is 83. Okay, I think that's right. Okay. 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 So if we're, what did I say that was? I need to put some comments on here. I'm going to lose track. So 65 is left. So that's A. Oh. That way ASD. -1 on the Y is going to be W. That's up. And +1 on the Y is going to be S. Yeah, okay. So, we might change this later on for something I've only discovered recently, but for now this will do fine. But we have a me.move, and we called it update. So maybe we should call it move. Let's call it move. But also we passed in 2 parameters to that move, so that means we have to put in X and Y. Now, just to make a note, this we only ever send in 1, 0 or -1 into this method. This method doesn't say how much we move the ship, it just simply says that the ship is moving in one of the 2 dimensions. So if you've got 2 dimensions, you've got basically 4 directions you could move in, other than 0, which is nothing. Minus and plus for the Y, and whichever way you look at this, minus and plus for the X. So that's your 4 directions. And these are the 4 directions here: minus on the X, nothing on the Y; plus on the X, nothing on the Y; nothing on the X, minus on the Y; nothing on the X, plus on the Y. And that gives us our 4 directions. So we tell this ship that we are moving in those directions, and we can, for now, we can set it that the ship locally works out the distance, but ultimately the server is going to do that for us. But for the purposes of demonstrating this, we'll do it as it is right now. We'll let our local computer work out how much it's going to move. So let's see, how can we do this? First of all, we can create equals create vector X and Y. So we're doing the same as what we did with the position, because position we made into a vector which has got an X and Y coordinate. But we can also do it with the velocity, and velocity we can create another vector. I think I explained this in the version 1 series of Asteroids, if you want to go into more detail in this. But the beauty of doing it this way is P5 allows us to add two vectors together. So if you've got something here at, I don't know, x1, y1, you'd be looking at this way. So x1, y1 here, and I want to go in a direction that's up 2 and across 1, then I will create a vector that's up 2 and across 1, or y minus 2 x1. And if I add that to that, it adds the two together. So you'd have a y of minus 3 and an x of 2, which is the 1 plus 1 plus the 2 plus 1. And it just adds the two x's together and the two y's together, and that gives you the result. So all we have to do now, we have our original position here, we have our vector. Now at the minute we're just adding up to 1 or minus 1, we're not multiplying it out to 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever, but it still works. So now all we have to do is this dot position dot add, so we remember we're adding one vector to another, and we just have to add this dot velocity. It's as easy as that. Load the page. Now nothing's happening at the minute, but if I press my keys, still nothing's happening. And that's because we haven't yet introduced key pressed into any of the rest of the code. We've declared it as a function, but it's not called anywhere. It's just sat there waiting to be called, but we never call it. So now we start talking about the draw function. The setup function, we said, gets loaded once, and that gets loaded once at the beginning of the page load. But after that, the setup function never gets called again. But every frame, which we start off averaging at about 60 frames per second, every frame runs at I think it's about 60 times a second, 60 frames a second. And this draw method is ran every time a frame is run. So if we were to put the key is pressed reference in here, it means it's always going to check for whether a key is pressed. Makes sense? So all I have to do now is refer to that function here, keys pressed, and save it. So now 60 times a second, it's going to check if I'm pressing a key. See how that looks? Okay, still doesn't work. So what's going on? Okay. So here's the deal. We ran this function once. We declared the ship and we show it, but that's it. We never run the show method again. The show method is what draws the ship. So if we never run the show method again, we're never going to draw the ship again. So it doesn't matter how much we move the ship, it's never going to show itself in a new position because we're not calling that function. So best thing to do is put the show method now in this draw, so that after it's been updated by the key pressed, when we run move, it will then show again. See if this works. Reload the page and we have movement. So I'm going up, left, down, down, right, right, up, right, up, right, up, right, down, left, right, up. Some kind of tunnel maze game of some sort, but maybe that's the subject of another game. So we've obviously got movement here, but now we've just got this bit of an issue of this remnant of drawing that it's left on the screen. You may have figured this out already based on what we've just discussed. So we ran the setup function once where we created the background of that purple colour, but every time we redraw the ship, we never redraw the background. So the ship just gets redrawn again and again to whatever the point it is that it's set to at that given time. so nothing else ever deletes that. It's not like a separate object that carries itself along. It's just drawing itself, and if it moves, it draws itself. But whatever it drew here stays. So we need to get rid of it, and the way you get rid of it is you redraw the background in the draw method rather than in the setup method. So now every frame it's going to wipe it clean, draw the background, draw me, wipe it clean, draw the background, draw me, 60 times a second or whatever it can handle. So now we reload. So I'm moving this with my keys, and it's effectively given us the effect of animation of moving the circle, when in fact all we're actually doing is saying change the position of the current circle, clear the screen and redraw it. But look at that, we now have animation. If we go back to the original one here, you can see we're now starting to get something more in the lines of what we had here. So that's cool, isn't it? Now do we create the triangle? No, we'll come back to that because we're going to have some issues when we come to positioning. The reason why I say that is here the screen itself is pretty much static. You know, things stay static relative to themselves in this screen. But when we play our multiplayer game, no matter where you move, you will always be in the middle of the screen here. You know, if the screen moves across, everything will move across with it, and you will appear to stay in the middle, which is not what we're doing at the minute. We actually move. So that's going to alter how we do this positioning. So I'll tell you what, let's create asteroids. That'll be the next best thing to do, I think. So in our classes folder here, let's create a new file called asteroid.js. So let's create it as we did the ship. Asteroid, it's a new one. Okay, so we need a constructor. So similar to the ship, I think we just need an X and a Y, and do you know what? The function is exactly the same, isn't it? If I just copy that one, just create the position with the X and the Y. However, asteroid.prototype.show. Is this the same as the shape? I'm just going to draw. Yeah, okay, so for now, let's just draw that. We'll draw them a bit bigger. So we'll call it 50 by 50. Okay. And okay. Okay, so we have our asteroid class, so we need to bring that in here. Ooh, no, that's not what I wanted. So let's just okay, so now we can load an asteroid in Sketch. What's going to be the best way to do this? We want to create a few of these really. So let's create an array. Asteroids. Okay. And so this is like a common notation for looping over things. 10 a plus. Okay, so this is basically saying set a to 0 and add 1 to it, on every loop until while it's less than 10. As soon as we get to 10, we stop it, and then we come up the end of the loop and we carry on doing whatever we're doing. So that means it'll do something 10 times. So what I can say now is asteroids dot push, which basically just means add it to the end of this asteroid array here. New asteroid, and remember we set asteroid once an x and a y, so let's just set it to the middle of the screen. Width divided by 2, height divided by 2. Let's just set it to that for now. Okay. So when we draw let's draw the asteroids here. So we need to loop over them again. However, I'm sort of falling into some bad practices here. So I've hard-coded a 10 here. I might change that later, and it means I've got to change it there. It might be better if we just set a variable here. I'm going to set it as a const because it's not going to change. So const asteroid count equals 10. Now all I have to do is put asteroid count in there and asteroid count in there. Yeah. So now I only have to change it in one place. So in the draw, well, we don't want to create them again, but what we want to do is move them and show them. Yeah. Okay. So that means we now need to create a move and a show method for asteroids. And we already have a show. Did ship have a move method? Yeah. But it's a little different with asteroids because we're not moving it. So, okay. Let's see if we can do this. Asteroid dot quote type dot move equals function. Okay. So, how did I do it on the old one? So in the asteroid class, oh, let me just scale this down a bit. Yeah, so the asteroids are at different stages, so they start off big and then as you hit them they go smaller. So you can see the radius starts off large, but then as the stage develops they go smaller. Let's just start at stage 50 to start with. So it looks like similar to the ship, but it's a random number, anywhere between -1 and 1 in either direction. So that looks okay. We could do that. So let's copy that create vector method. So this dot velocity. Dot velocity equals create vector. We don't need the p5s. Okay, so this basically says for the x and the y, pick a number between -1 and 1, or -1 and 1 on both axes, and use that as the speed. Now 1 is the speed we've set our ship to go, so anything between 1 and, because we've just put the variables 1 or 0 in there, so anything between 1 and -1 is basically up to the speed of the ship, or less. Theoretically it could be 0. I mean, it is a fraction, so the odds are highly low, but we might have to remove that. Anyway, for now. So each asteroid gets a velocity, and as we did with the ship, this dot position dot add this dot velocity. So that's the move function. Then the show function is we're just showing it. Do you know what? I think that could work. So when we draw it, we're drawing the ship. For each asteroid, oh, I need to access the asteroid. So asteroids A, which is going to be 0 to 9, that gives us our 10 asteroids. I think that's it. I think we're good. As interesting as that is, that's not the desired effect. Although, I'll make a mental note of that for other stuff. In the proper game, the asteroids go in the same direction. Well, I've not been hit yet. No matter what, they just keep going, whereas these appear to be changing direction on every frame, so I've obviously done this a bit wrong. So, oh, yeah. So I've created the velocity in the move function, which means every time the move function is being called, which is 60 frames a second, it's given it a new velocity, which basically is a new direction. That is no good. So what we need to do is move that into the constructor. Now that's only around once, the velocity is set, and then it just adds that velocity every time. That's the ticket. So then along with that I can move my ship. Yay. Okay. So we're getting somewhere. Okay, I think that's a good place to break for this particular video. So let's carry on with 2.1 next time.